Good morning. Today is the last Sunday in June, which means my favorite months are slipping away much too quickly. Time is also slipping away for Michigan legislators who have some tough decisions to make as the state faces major budget deficits. We'll talk about that and more. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Our guest this morning is State Representative Sarah Cambenzi, who represents Marquette, Alger, Luce, and Schoolcraft counties in Michigan's 109th district in the State House. State government, like all of us, is facing many challenges because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I began our conversation with Representative Cambenzi by asking her how the House is conducting business in these times of face masks and social distancing.
We're spread out all over the chamber right now. So some of us, I'm one of them, our seats are in the gallery, and there's two of us to a bench, and then we're going every other row on the floor. So we've made limited business in Lansing. Only the stuff that we really need to get done is what we're focusing on. Going down for 1 or 2 days a week and then heading back to our district, and like you, doing everything remotely on our Zoom meetings.
So how do you feel we're doing? Do you feel the state is on the right track?
I think we're on the right track in terms of, following all of the safeguards, but certainly, trying to get our business done. It's been hard to kind of get into this routine. However, I will say, the biggest threat that faces the legislature right now is that lack of revenue. And again, it's about $3 billion this year that we're looking at, having a shortfall. That doesn't include what local government is facing or our local school districts.
Are you pretty much waiting now at this point to see if the federal government's going to do anything?
We passed one small package, this week, and that included money for $100 million for our small business loans again to go out through the MEDC, a little bit for education. But for the most part, we are waiting to kind of see if we're going to, get more money from the federal government, or if we're going to have to make those 30% cuts at the state level, and let our partners that rely on us, our school districts, our local government, know that they have to make deep cuts as well.
Is there any discussion at all about how you're going to deal with those cuts? I mean,
yep.
What can be done?
Each department has been given the heads up that the Senate Appropriation Committee has said that we are going to do a 30%, 20%, and 10% cut for each department. So everyone that has a committee on the Senate side that deals specifically with one department, that's been communicated. I think you're seeing the governor start to find ways to save money by furloughing workers 1 day a week, just like many of our locals are doing now with that federal unemployment assistance. But I think everyone knows that if we can't come up with additional revenue, if the feds don't come in and help us out a little bit, those cuts are going to be deep, and there probably will be some layoffs.
You spent a lot of time working in education, of course. What about the schools? They've got kind of a double whammy going here. They're not sure what they're going to have to do in the fall, and they don't know how much money they're going to have available to do it, and they have to have a budget by the end of this month.
Right. I'm looking at my district right now across the 109th, again, Marquette, Alger, Schoolcraft, and Luce. And what I'm hearing back is about half of my school districts cannot survive on the current cut they're being asked to make, which is between $700 and $800. Most of them, if it was a $400 cut, could do it, but they can't cut busing. How do you tell one family, well, because of where you live, we're just not going to pick you up. And that's what's really different from a lot of my colleagues downstate. A lot of those school districts, they don't bus kids. They can find ways to cut back that doesn't really impact, each child getting a fair shake at coming to school and learning. So those differences are huge. And again, the governor put together a committee. We do have Travis Smith from Marquette, who is on that K-12 reopening committee. And I know he's going to be down there kind of telling our story in rural Michigan in the UP, just how difficult it's going to be for us and our school districts to find that money to cut.
And as I understand it from talking to Marquette Superintendent Bill Saunders, the districts aren't absolutely certain about even this year, which for them is actually all over, as to whether or not they will lose money from the current year's budget. Is that right? Yep,
there's that dilemma going on right now, as well as next year. And again, because of when the shutdown happened and getting closer now to the next fiscal year, we are going to be straddling 2 fiscal years at the state level, and most schools are, as well as local government. So it's not just this year, it's next year.
We'll be back to talk more about the state's financial challenges after we take this break. Returning to our conversation with State Representative Sarah Cambenzi, I asked her if there's been any serious consideration given to raising taxes as part of a solution to the state's financial crisis.
I just think that there's no time to really come up with a plan, have everyone agree on it, implement that, go out and put a higher tax on whatever it is and get that revenue in. I mean, it really, we can't shift that fast, even if we wanted to, and all agreed on raising taxes somewhere, whether it's the gas pump or income tax or something like that. And there's certainly hesitation. I mean, we're walking a fine line with the economy, and we don't want people to suffer more. We don't want to put another burden on them. Many of them that are still waiting for their unemployment checks. So at this point, it looks like the only avenue we have, if we don't get additional funding and help from the feds, is to really cut back.
And I guess for cities, the question is what's going to happen to revenue sharing. Their local tax revenue is fairly secure, but nobody has the answer about revenue sharing either, I guess. Huh?
No, and it's something where when you talk to the city of Marquette, and you and I both served on the commission there, they're looking at just the decrease in water usage, sewer. Northern broke and went home. A lot of people, aren't going into work where those commercial rates are higher. And so, they're looking at a deficit anywhere from, 200 to 400,000 just in that department. Overall, they're about 800,000 in revenue shortages. So you take another almost $1 million out of a, $18 million budget for the city, where are they going to find that?
Right.
So it's dire.
You mentioned unemployment a minute ago, and I know that's been one of the difficult subjects for the state as far as how it's been handled, and I know you've been very concerned about that. In fact, I think you testified recently about you'd like to see the offices open again, so at least people have an option to try to deal with their problem. Are we making some progress there?
We are. Yesterday, I did receive an email from the governor saying that she has asked the department to address that request. So you probably will see more this coming week. They do have to talk to the state employees union and kind of decide what that's going to look like, because again, the decision was made months ago to furlough some of these state employees 1 day a week. What I'm asking is we've got more and more people now getting on unemployment, maybe trying to go in and make their claim every 2 weeks, pressing a wrong button. Maybe something's not aligned right. And if they could just talk to someone in person, if they could just have someone call them back, these are easy fixes. And we figured in my office alone, out of the 429 we now have, half of those could be cleared within a day or two if these regional offices were just open. And so that's really what we're asking for, is look at our offices that are helping you as a partner and let us help you find those efficiencies.
And speaking of the governor, and I'm not going to dredge up the whole debate about whether she's been right or wrong and
Yeah.
how this has been conducted, but one issue that's gotten a lot of attention is the nursing home issue. And I
Yeah.
know you did vote in favor of a resolution which was critical of the governor and the way that was handled. What are your
And
thoughts there?
I think some of us as Dems didn't look at it as being critical of the governor, but again, as we go through this, there's no book telling us what to do at what moment and how to pivot. I think we're just asking her to pivot and, really realize that the population that this virus is affecting, it's the elderly population. And so to put people who are infected back into these nursing homes, we've seen it in the 109th district. That's where a lot of our cases were, and certainly a lot of the deaths. And I do want to say Norlight has handled this wonderfully, and they just posted, I saw recently this week, that they are COVID free. So hats off to them. They did a great job, but I know for a while it was tense, very tense.
One other question with the governor. During the town hall meeting she did recently, she seemed to question the wisdom of having an Upper Peninsula State Fair this year. Did you come away from that with the same feeling?
I'm getting a lot of questions on that. A lot of our county fairs have, said we're going to take a year off, and a lot of that is because the volunteers it takes to put it on. Again, they have families. They might be older, and they just don't want to take the risk. And I think legislators feel differently on this. Of course, it's a big time. It's a lot of revenue, and certainly a lot of ways to showcase who we are and things important to us, especially on the agricultural side. But I do think it could be a recipe for disaster, and I think there's a lot of people looking at it to say, how is it going to happen, or how are we going to do this safely? I do think there'll be less people coming than normal, but certainly it's going to be a lot harder to control.
When we return to our conversation with State Representative Cambenzi, we'll talk about property taxes, and that's 2 minutes away. One of the bills under consideration in the State House of Representatives would allow residents to defer payment of their summer home property taxes. I asked Representative Cambenzi about the impact on local units of government.
That's kind of the big discussion. We're looking at how do we give people relief? How do we, certainly make sure that there's maybe a longer period that they have to make those payments, knowing again that some people are still waiting for those unemployment checks. But certainly we have to make that change in the Constitution. And at this point, if the locals don't collect that local tax money, it all goes to the state. And again, we're looking at the fact that we furloughed all of our workers 1 day a week. For them to collect all of this money is a nightmare. So, how do we deal with this? What's the best way? Really, we need to go in and change the law and certainly change how that happens.
You've also been involved, I know, in some hearings regarding fisheries.
Yes.
Apparently a dispute between sports fishing and commercial fishing. What's your interest there, and what are your thoughts?
I think what you're looking at are 3 bills that are coming through that are extremely, they're very limiting for commercial fishing. And, the hearing started off in the House, and the dialogue was, this is the year that we have to come together with our tribal members. We have to get our house in order because, we want to make some changes. That's what we were hearing from the sport fishing side was we don't like some of the things that are happening. We don't like that there's some overcatch. There's some game species, lake trout, walleye that are getting caught in the nets. And we don't know if commercial fishing is doing it on purpose or what, but we don't like it. Those are our fish. Leave them alone. And from the commercial side, what we're hearing is because of the invasive species, because of the Great Lakes changing with the temperature and all of that, the mussels that actually lay on the bottom are eating up a lot of the food that the perch and the whitefish traditionally eat. That's why you're seeing the walleye population explode. In Lake Huron, it's also why you're seeing the lake trout population explode. And those are great things. But if we don't manage the predator fish, the lake trout and the walleye in these lakes, like Wisconsin, like they're doing in Minnesota, like they're doing in Canada, we're going to see less numbers of perch. Naturally, we're going to see less numbers of whitefish. And right now, commercial fishing, they rely on whitefish. And what they're saying is we might have to change course while the Great Lakes are changing, or we can't make it in business. And so the fight is really on those game fish, what's allowed, who's allowed to take them, and what's fair. And I think you're seeing Senator McBroom and certainly Representative Markin and Lefebvre as well say there should be enough fish in the lake, but we should be able to work together and kind of resolve and come up with solutions on to how we're going to go forward with this. It might be a change. It's certainly going to make the sport fishing groups mad. But at the same time, if we don't have the money to manage the lakes, stock the lakes, and control the lakes how we've wanted to, which we don't right now as a state, then we need to look at other solutions, like allowing a partial catch of some of these fish until they balance out again. And so it's very controversial. People are very fired up on both sides. But I will say that commercial fishing, if we don't get our locals to catch this fish for us, bring them to a market, and then allow our restaurants to buy them at wholesale prices, we will be buying them from other states, and the cost will go up for the other 90-some% of people that don't go out and fish themselves, but really rely on these commercial operations and the tribal members to bring us that resource.
Well, obviously, you have many challenging problems you're facing, from financing to fishing. So,
yes.
Any final thoughts before we wrap it up today?
I will say I'm really proud of the UP and just how everyone came together and really took it seriously when we went into this stay-home order back in March. Again, we didn't really know what we were facing, and as time went on and we saw those numbers start to go up, I think the governor had to make a very hard decision. Not everyone was happy. Certainly, as we went through all of her executive orders, there's things that she'll admit she didn't do right. But just understand that all of us in elected positions are really trying our best. Balancing the economy and the health and safety of residents is an extremely tough thing to do.
I appreciate today's update from Representative Cambenzi and extend my best wishes to her and her colleagues as they deal with some very challenging issues. I'll be back in just 2 minutes. We've talked before about how as we age, our memories can sometimes start to get a little fuzzy at times. I'm not referring to the serious issues of Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia, but those occasional lapses that leave a lot of us scratching our head as we get a little older. More than once I've gotten up from my desk at work, back when I was not working from home, started heading down the hallway, and suddenly realized I forgot what got me up in the first place. Where was I going? And what did I plan to do when I got there? Or I've headed off to the supermarket or building supply store to get one particular item, only to return home with bags of groceries or hardware, but without the one item I had set out to buy in the first place. So let me tell you the story of a memory misadventure. You see, 2 or 3 years ago, I bought a laptop computer. I do a lot of writing, and primarily use the desktop computer I have here in my home office. I bought the laptop because there are times, like a nice summer day, when I like to get out of the office and sit on the back porch and write while still enjoying the sunshine and summer breezes. The computer wasn't expensive, just something that let me access the internet and use a word processing program. I liked the options it gave me concerning where I could be when I was writing, but the truth is, it didn't get a lot of use. So last December, when I started looking for the laptop, I couldn't find it. I asked my wife if she'd seen it, and she hadn't. We started what I considered a fairly thorough search of the house, but it was nowhere to be found. None of us remembered the last time we'd seen it and had no idea where it could be. I thought I might have taken it on a weekend trip to Mackinac Island in August, which led to a search of our luggage to see if I'd left it in a suitcase. It wasn't there. We finally convinced ourselves that we did take it on that weekend trip and had either left it in the hotel or someone had stolen it from the case we had it stored in. We didn't check with the hotel because it just didn't seem likely it would still be sitting in there lost and found 4 months later. So now we jump ahead in the story to earlier this year when I was about to celebrate a birthday. My wife asked if there was something I might like for a birthday gift, and I said a replacement for my lost laptop could be a good idea. And so on my birthday, as I opened my gift, I was happy but not surprised to see a new laptop. I opened it, got it all set up, made it mine, did a little writing just to give it a test drive, and it worked fine. The very next day, our teenage granddaughter was looking for something in a room downstairs, and what do you suppose she found? You probably guessed it. The missing laptop. It was actually sitting on a recessed shelf that was kind of in plain view. When I saw it, I remembered I wanted to put it somewhere that was out of the way yet easily accessible when I wanted to use it. Unfortunately, I forgot that part. Is there a moral to the story? Perhaps it's this: if there's something you use only occasionally, remember where you put it when you're not using it. Otherwise, you may wind up with two when you really only want one. Or perhaps the moral is things do change as we get older. Our memory is one of them. You might as well get used to it. I'll be back in a minute. Time to wrap it up for our last meeting in June. The Today Show will be here in just a moment. Keep in mind that you can also see current and past episodes of this show at uppermichigansource.com. Thanks to Representative Cambenzi for joining us this morning to discuss some of the issues our legislators are facing in Lansing. And thank you for being here. I hope to see you again next Sunday morning.